Okay, we are live. Hello, good morning. Welcome, NextOppSocial family. Welcome to another live chat discussion here on the NextOppSocial channel. Where I am Richelle Wright Wilson. As always, I'm joined by Joanne Buford. But before we jump into the discussion today, if you're watching with us here, whether it's live or on the replay, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an interview, a live, or never miss out on these incredible discussions that we have here on NextOppSocial. So today we're talking about money, revenue goals, right? So we're officially here in September. We're in the last quarter of 2020. It's been a wild year. I know many can relate, but this has been one of the longest years and somehow very Groundhog Day-ish type of year as well. Days blur together. But today we're going to touch on some things as business owners, not only that we can look forward to as we hit the end of 2020, but things that we should be focusing on, taking advantage of. So regardless if you're a service provider or a B2B business owner, a product-based owner, either online or with brick and mortar, or even if you're building an organization in the nonprofit sector, there are some events that you need to pay close attention to that are coming up. They're not new, they're not unique to 2020 per se, but things to take advantage of with maybe a different focus than you have in the past as we hit this year. So the first thing coming up this month in September is National Small Business Week. So the U.S. Small Business Administration is kicking off a virtual National Small Business Week during the week of September 22nd. So coming up. So if you're not familiar with it, is National Small Business Week honors the nation's small businesses, many of which they focus on a lot that are veteran-owned, women-owned, minority-owned for their achievements and dedication to their communities. And while the Small Business SBA does a more formal event, right? They're doing a whole event. That doesn't mean that if you're not a part of that event, which most of us are not per se, that you shouldn't throw your hat into the marketing ring of taking advantage of that buzz and discussion around that time. So, making sure that you highlight again that you are a small business. It's what's going to be talked about a lot, especially over the course of this month, right? And leading into October, that you're reminding your audience of what it is that you do. The next thing that we're all super familiar with, obviously, is the holidays, right? Holiday shopping. So we have Black Friday, basically holiday shopping in general. So even though shopping and spending has looked drastically different this year, that doesn't mean Black Friday's canceled or any of that's canceled. It's just very much going to be focused online. And in recent years, we've seen it spread out over the entire weekend and to what would used to be called like Cyber Monday, but I think in our society, all shopping is online all the time. So every day is Cyber Monday. And then after that, with that sort of nonprofit area, is Giving Tuesday, which happens that Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So Giving Tuesday was started in 2012. It's really just the simple idea of a day that encourages people to do good. But since then, it's grown into a really big global movement that really inspires millions of people to give and collaborate and celebrate generosity. So it's typically a 24-hour, sometimes a little bit longer event where organizations push campaigns to raise as much money as possible. But also something in recent years that social platforms such as like Facebook and Instagram have hopped on to help match those donations and encourage spending on social media. So my purpose of bringing those three up is not tell you to hurry up and gear up for a solid strategy or whatever that something new or unique is happening to help you crush these revenue goals, but to remind you that everyone's mindset or society's mindset is moving to a purchasing one, right? The more we see messages about buying and sales and deals and holidays and all those things that come up with the end of the year, the more people are going to focus on what to buy. And on that note, with 2020, we've already seen unique changes that have developed with purchasing habits over the year, specifically with an increase in value and convenience. So when I say value, I mean both business value and personal value. And we talk a lot about it here on our discussions, but emotions matter more than reason and logic in the buying world, right? We justify our purchases that are rooted in emotion with logic after the fact. So if you have not found yet a process for being consistent on social media, emailing your customers, showing up digitally for them throughout the year due to whatever circumstance, now is the time to ramp that up for sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you broached this topic with me. I immediately thought about a couple text messages that I've received over the last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And both text messages were basically to the effect where the potential client had been receiving emails and a text message every now and again, hope everything's going well during the pandemic, family's doing okay, you're still meeting your goals. Couple individuals, I had wished them happy birthday. Like I literally picked up the phone and called them and wished them happy birthday. A couple individuals I know, their parents were having challenges and they were concerned about their parents' health. And I kind of followed up very briefly just to make sure their parents are okay and to see how they were doing, if I connect with resources. And these individuals reached out to me, both of them literally within the last 7 days. And both of them basically told me via text message and via email, one of them, that they see me.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we've seen your emails, we've seen your text messages. You reached out to me, you said hi, you said hello, you actually cared. And they both said, you know what? I know you're involved in A, B, and C, D business, offering this service. I am ready, and you are the person I want to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was powerful, right? And so as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about that, right? The fact that this pandemic is going to cover the holidays, right?
Yep.
And you have a lot of people out here. It's kind of, they talk about the K-shaped recovery, right? How you have one class strata here in the US, the haves, as I like to call them, who are doing very well. I mean, it is what it is. No getting around it. There is a segment of the US population where the pandemic didn't hurt them at all. Matter of fact, they're doing better during the pandemic than they were before, right? And then you have another group of individuals here in this country where all they've done is catch hell, right? And if we're speaking about the entrepreneurial community, we're talking about the stress and strains of managing the business, dealing with family, dealing with loss, dealing with the stress of not knowing how do I respond to this unconventional issue. Like, you don't account for a pandemic in your business plan. And when I think about marketing, and of course, Shelly, you can speak to this with much more fluency than I can. When I think about marketing and I think about messaging and I think about how to ramp up, so to speak, for this season, I think a lot about how can I find ways to let people know that I really do care about what's happening to you, or how can I find ways to let people know, especially being a B2B entrepreneur myself, that small business ownership is important and that we as communities, we need small business community to thrive, right? How can I incorporate that into my messaging? How can I find ways even to be altruistic myself, right? How can I find causes to get involved with? I mean, I literally even thought about for the next 3 months, maybe taking 10% of all the revenues that I earn, letting people know that 10% of all the revenues that I earn is going to go towards this cause, at least for the next 3 to 6 months, right? Causes that I believe will actually result in change, right? And actually result in small business owners, since that's my love and passion, and small business owners getting what they need to level up and be successful. right? Or quite frankly, what about those individuals who don't even make the news, right? These people who are, for me, it's shocking to think about this, but I mean, you do have people who are lining up like the Great Depression for food.
Mm-hmm.
They're lining up. They don't have the means to feed themselves. It's, you know, when we're working in our bubbles in our Zoom worlds, it's easy to forget that there's a lot of hardship taking place right down the street from us. And so I've been thinking about that critically as well. Like, what can I do within reason to make an impact there as well? And, you know, like I said before, I mean, these are the things that I think about, I've been ideating about lately. And I know you can speak much more to it, Rochelle.
Yeah. So this idea of social good has been building over the years, and it's been in terms of when not just social good, but in terms of how we market and how we buy, right? But this year, 100% is when it's pushed it into its stride. So yes, offering value and convenience for your customers is a really big focus for a lot of people who are buying or focused on what people are looking at when they're making decisions. But people are really making much more of a conscious effort to buy from businesses, brands, and people that they perceive to be good for society. We want to feel good about the money we're spending. We want to feel that our money is making an actual impact, whether we're putting that into people or putting that into products or putting it into services. That's more important now than ever. So I think what's really something, as you were talking about, is ramping up your messaging in that area. How do you put value, convenience, and goodness at the forefront of your business? This needs to be all you talk about. What are you doing, not just to service your customers, but to make them feel good about putting their money behind what you do, right? I don't think this year is going to showcase, especially at the end, about racing to the bottom of who's the cheapest price, who has the best deals, or who's going to have what I usually see around this time is marketing messaging that blatantly is seeming trying to combat their competitors. If you get tunnel vision right now on anything, it needs to be on your people, what they value, what they feel is good, what's going to make them feel good, and stick with that. And you should do very well, because that type of messaging and focus, it's not going to go away after the end of this year, right? Even leading into the new year, it's vitally important that as we're coming into this season where life shifts a little bit and we're adding on this very traumatic social experience that we've all dealt with at some level, you need to speak from the heart and soul of your business to keep your business alive right now. So, you know, the beginning of the the beginning of the year, the first and second quarter of 2020, turned many businesses upside down, right? Or people had to pivot, but even some were successful, but it made planning and preparing for the future very difficult, right? So a lot of companies, though, even if they were able to ramp up or whatever and do well, what you see is as well, though, a lot of the companies that have done very well have retained their focus on existing customers and kept that focus very, very focused on their current audience. So I think especially now going into the end of the year, when the people, Joanne, like who are paying attention to your messaging, these are already your people, they already know you, and you're going to do more. Businesses are going to do more to cultivate these existing people, this current audience, than right now, and make more from that than just trying to compete for this new attention to ramp up sales. And that can be true for most of holiday years or Q4 selling years. But if you really want to make an impact this year, because there's still time to do that, you need to double down on who's already purchasing from you and paying attention to you. So that's things like resolving customer issues very quickly, offering real-time chat features or more intuitive autoresponders when people are utilizing reaching out to you, right, on social or whatever, your website. Being flexible, even with things like cancellation refund policies right now. Making your marketing campaigns a lot more personalized, offering special incentives or free upgrades or virtual events or whatever to customers that you have. We talk about all the time about, and we talked about this back in March, April when we started doing this, that this is the new normal, right? COVID's not, even if COVID goes away, things are not going back to how they were, and that's still true, right? Even if tomorrow everything opened up and everything was allowed to go back to the way it was, things have changed, people have changed, habits have changed, whether it's COVID or not. You have to find a new stride in business, how you market, how you reach people. But the good news is that all of your customers and clients, we're all also learning to live with this new normal, right? So in terms of, especially in terms of buying power, because we're all learning to live with this new normal, there is an optimistic upturn, right? And if you have customers who have stuck with you and they're ready to buy, you need to cater to them like the kings and queens of your business. They're what's gonna make and break you, not necessarily these new individuals who don't know you yet.
I love it. Yeah. Creating warm market, creating community, creating resonance. Yeah, it is ironic. Like, we started the year talking about how important it is, but I think even in our conversations, and I know we talk a lot about client services and bringing more value. I wouldn't say it's oftentimes relegated to a footnote. It's on the to-do list. When I think about my to-do list, what am I doing to meet that particular need? And then now, of course, as a result of the pandemic, now it's at the top of the list, right? It's not, I need to do A, B, C, and D. It's like, no, I need to start with, what am I doing to resonate with people whom I have relationships with, and also make sure that I'm presenting information, I'm presenting content in such a way where they'll be inclined to share that content, and anyone who I am fortunate enough to onboard that's new, that they'll feel the exact same way. Now, you really just said a mouthful. And then, of course, I'm thinking about the conversations that I'm having with business owners on a daily basis. And yeah, I mean, even though those who are thriving, those who are doing well during the pandemic, that's a huge blessing. It's wonderful. They're still going through it. I'm thinking about a client of mine now where she has literally been working from 5 o'clock in the morning to 8 p.m. every single day at her office, just trying to hold it all together.
Right.
Because of the different changes the pandemic has wrought in terms of compliance, in terms of how she's being compensated as a business owner, in terms of having to cater to the needs of her clients, specifically the parent. She has a child care, and all that entails, right, in terms of how the state and federal government is going to treat her business, and if there are any going to be any special programs. I mean, this stuff is racking her brain 24/7, and she's having to do double time, right? And I have to believe that most entrepreneurs and business owners are feeling the exact same way right now. That, to one extent or another, that's our experience right now. And what can I do to create even more convenience? What can I do to go even further than I've gone before to make sure that I am sensitive to that fact? And of course, being a parent and talking to other parents, childcare is fascinating right now. Schooling is fascinating. There's been a lot of adaptation that's have to occur there as well. You can have a lot of families who still have the children at home. And then, of course, you have a lot of families who are even considering at-home schooling. And some people may be saying, oh, why is that relevant? Because keep in mind, business owners, your clients are people too. They have family, they have children, they have responsibilities. Their lives are still being turned upside down, even if they're quote unquote doing well. And I just firmly believe any way that you can be cognizant of those things and be responsive to those type of pressures, you're going to win. You're gonna win. And those are some of the things that I'm thinking about as well.
Yeah, it's brought up with this idea of being available, with adding convenience, adding customer service. You talk about your client who's on and available, because especially as a business owner who serves other businesses, right? If you're B2B, if you have been available and present during this time, I would argue that you have not had a moment to stop being available and present during this time, right? With like, as your client has
Right.
as well. And a few things have happened because of that. One is our expectations of what we perceive as, we were already getting used to our overnight shipping and Amazon Prime 2-day whatever, and we can have whatever we want. We can have it right now. But especially now in terms of customer service, that has like settled in as well, of like, well, I want to answer right now. I want a response right now. I don't care if it's 3 a.m, right? And in some ways that's been that's going to be a unique challenge and thing that I see technology needs to catch up with, so that we can take that break a little bit without not being available physically as much to our people. There are things that you can lean into to elevate that experience without having to always physically to be that person. So like, as I mentioned, social media platforms, especially Facebook, and I know there's a lot of issues with Facebook, but their chat features, even without installing bots and whatnot, are extremely intelligent, just on the basic things that you can set up on your Facebook page to answer questions on your behalf that typically get asked to you. The other thing is that you can install these chat features onto your website. You can install Facebook now onto your website, where anyone who visits it can start talking with you. And you're going to see more of that. You're going to see more of those things getting smarter. You're going to see more of those things becoming more robust. I would say that having a chat feature, or having some way, or being responsive in some capacity fairly quickly, is going to be a make or break situation moving forward too, with business owners. Because I think that's because of 2 reasons. It's one, it's showing that you care and you're available, and you value the people who allow you to be in business, and that's good. But I think too, it's just we've hit this also weird stride as society, where we need that personalized experience a little bit more with what we're doing. It's part of our different set of values of like, I think about the marketing messaging, commercials, things like that at the beginning of pandemic, that were, oh, we're all in this together and we're here for you, and how quickly everyone got very burnt out from seeing that type of messaging, right? Very intently pushed by every company ever that ever existed, whether it's an email or digital form, or like on TV and that kind of thing. And it hit this position a few months in of like, nobody wants to see that type of messaging, but they do want to see personal accountability, personal responses, everything needs to be more personalized. It's not enough to be like, oh, we're here for you. It's much more important now to really showcase, okay, but what are you doing for me personally?
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you mentioned Facebook, right? And once again, I'm going to kind of defer to you with some of this because, of course, I think, like you said before, for those of us who are aware of this, we had to be on all the time because they had to be on for our clients, right?
Mhm.
So there was really no break in the action for us. Um, but you also realize that you only have so much bandwidth yourself, right?
Right.
There's only, you only have so much time in the day to make those phone calls, send those personalized text messages, um, craft that email campaign. And of course, I'm speaking to the micro business owners, the solopreneurs, right? Who are pretty much doing it all themselves. You only have so much time in the day to do these different things. And ironic enough, I almost found myself going back old school again and really considering starting up a Facebook group. um, I literally found myself thinking about, okay, how can I be more creative about some of these email subgroups that I have, and how I can send messages that are even more specific, even more finely tuned to a particular demographic that I'm working with. Just things I can do to create efficiency and access and how I interact with people and how they're able to contact me, right? Um, because once again, there's only so many phone calls you can answer past 8, 9 o'clock where it starts to impact your psychological
Mhm.
health and your sense of well-being, right? Um, I mean, if you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I mean, 3 o'clock starts to impact you in a negative way too, right? So what are the things you can do that actually give you more agency and control, but still allow you to be more accessible? And, you know, you already know I'm not the biggest fan of creating Facebook groups because I know that can be a job in and of itself, but sometimes you have to do things that are important like that. You have to take those steps. You have to do the things that you're not willing to do to meet the need of the day. And the need of the day is, if you believe what we're sharing, is you're going to have to adopt different strategies and tactics. Um, like you said before, Shirley, not just over the next 3 months, but quite frankly, for the foreseeable future.
Mhm. And making that focus as digital as possible, because that's not, I mean, I don't think anyone thought it was going to go away, but those customer experiences are going to heavily stay in the digital space more so than they were in our in-person physical space, the in-person space, brick and mortar
Yes.
space. So where can you lean into those areas? If you were typically going to around this time hire more sales associates or things like that, you might actually need to shift that into, how do I hire a customer service rep who can just be available and online so someone is answering questions, things like that. Talk about Facebook groups. I've set up Facebook groups in the past for companies, and I've always suggested this is a good idea, where it's almost like your FAQ area, right? It's a community that, not necessarily where you have to always be providing value, but a space where people can join. They know if they ask a question, they can get it answered a little bit more directly or quickly. But the other thing about growing those areas is that they can become a little self-sustaining, where someone can ask a question, another customer could answer it, something like that, or another client can answer it. So those can be really helpful too, right? Even just having a space where you can keep those conversations in one area so that you can quickly reference people to those answers can be really helpful as a Facebook group as well. So yeah, it's super important to not dismiss things like Facebook groups or messaging apps or whatever that you have either utilized yourself, or think that they can only be used in one way or a traditional way. If you can make those situations work for whatever you need it to work for, do it, right? and do it now for the most part.
Yeah, that's the key word. Do it now.
Right. Yes.
um, the other thing I think about, of course, is, and this is just kind of par for the course, right? You hit the nail on the head, like how ramping up, what that also means is that you're going to have to invest not just more time, but you're going to invest money. You are.
Yeah.
You're going to have
Yeah.
to invest money in your marketing. And I know for many business owners, if you haven't reached this point in your development, it's counterintuitive, right? You think you want to invest more in structure. You think you want to invest more, quite frankly, in personnel and staff. That's important. You want to invest in ways that increase capacity. But the bottom line is you're going to have to really work hard and you have to make a concerted effort, like literally dedicate money, dedicate budget to marketing. I just had a conversation with a business owner late last night. And, I was sharing with them that, look, when I think about all the business owners that I work with, the one thing that I've seen in common time and time and time again is they have not even a robust social media presence, but they have a presence.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to Instagram, you can go to LinkedIn, you can go to Facebook, you can find them on YouTube, and they're present, they're available. And I don't think that's coincidence. Whereas when I look at those business owners that, quite frankly, didn't fare so well, and many who are not here today and had to pivot out of entrepreneurship altogether, when I jump online, there's scarcity. I didn't see too much information about them aside from a website. There were no testimonies. There were no videos or not even blog information about this is who I am, this is my mission, my purpose, this is my value prop. None of that existed. And before the advice would be, look, just do something, right? Just do something, because people weren't doing too much of anything. A lot of people weren't utilizing social media and utilizing evergreen content online to build their businesses. So the idea was, okay, we just get you to do something, you'll be winning, right? But I firmly believe, and your show, you tell me if you think I'm wrong or right, but I firmly believe just doing something isn't going to cut it this season.
No.
Like, you may have to set aside, look, even $100 is better than nothing. Even $100 is better than nothing. But you're going to have to really turn up in terms of your investment in social media, and definitely contact individuals who can help you strategically spend whatever monies you have in a budget, whether it be 100, 500, 1,000, whatever the case may be. But just showing up isn't going to be enough.
Yeah. To be really transparent, when the pandemic hit earlier this year, the last thing everyone needed to stop doing was marketing. But unfortunately, that's one of the first areas to go when, be frank, when shit hits the fan sometimes, that seems to be very quickly what the marketing department, the marketing area disappears because people panic, spending needs to be cut. Marketing goes out the window because there's this thought process of I'll figure it out later, I can do this on my own. I actually, there's this whole process of that social media, because we as just people use it personally, that it's easy, right? It's just easy to do and easy to use. Or because we all have email and we can send emails, that email marketing is easy. Because we visit websites and because we use them, having a website work is easy, right? And it's not to say that these things have to be complicated, but it's, if you're trying to grab the attention of people in these areas and you haven't been, right, during this time, because your focus was on just staying afloat. But if staying afloat didn't involve marketing your business, then you have to double down and really hit it hard. I had clients who dropped me during the when pandemic hit, said immediately, I can't work right now. We can't do this right now. Some of those clients are not around. The clients that kept me, this is not necessarily to just toot my own horn, but the clients that we were able to, all we did was focus on marketing. All we did was focus on pivoting. All we did was focusing on our messaging and pushing it. For the most part, they're okay. They're doing fine. Some of them are doing better. So marketing is never something that you need to feel like I think it's funny too, is like some people will be like, oh, I've got a system, I've got it down, I am showing up, I am being present, I am consistent. Well, is it working though? Is it doing anything? Because you can show up, you can post, you can be available, but if it's not doing anything, then you might have hit a stride where you now need to shift what that is. You can post on Instagram all day and on Facebook all day, or even on YouTube, but if it's not doing anything, if it's not making any traction, then you need to rethink, well, why are you spending all that time doing that if it's not going to actually work? And I'm not saying all of it works overnight or super quickly or whatever, but it needs to be looked at, right? It's not enough, just like you said, it's not enough to do what you did. It's not enough. It's not enough even just to show up. You have to be really mindful in how you're showing up, especially for the rest of this year.
Yeah, it reminds me of some of the lessons I learned in 2008, right? You had all these businesses going through all these austerity measures. And I remember even myself thinking, well, you can cut expenses. And sometimes by cutting expenses, your business becomes more profitable. But you can't really cut yourself into more clients, right? And at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, you have to be taking on more clients. Bad economy, good economy. At the end of the day, if you're not marketing, your marketing is not generating new clients, you're going to be in trouble. It doesn't matter how much you cut. You're going to cut yourself right out of business, right? And I remember 2008 when I was looking at what was a big three, not a medium five, right? When we're talking about the automotive industry. And I remember Ford Motor Company in particular, number one, not necessarily being gung-ho about taking the stimulus dollars that the other companies did inside and outside auto industry, which I thought on their part was very astute. But I also paid attention to, and I think it's a great case study for the conversation we're having, how Ford Motor Company basically said, look, we're going to actually invest. And we're going to invest in other markets. And we're going to invest in other areas. And we're going to continue to push the Ford brand, right? We're going to continue to double down on the branding elsewhere and to the extent we can here locally. And instead of all these austerity measures, we're just going to cut where there's nothing left. We basically gut ourselves. They did the exact opposite in many respects. And I think about that lesson and observing not just Ford Motor Company, but other companies in general that took the same approach, right? You know, what you're sharing is a real important warning to small business owners. You cannot, even in a pandemic, when austerity measures are obviously necessary, you can't gut yourself so much that you don't have any innards, you don't have anything left inside to go out there and execute. And that's what you're doing when you don't invest in marketing. I mean, you are cutting yourself to the bone. And if there are opportunities that are out there, if there's a market out there, if there are ways and for you to break into a different market or industry, even if you need to change industries, you still have to make, here's the thing. There used to be a saying, if you build it, they'll come. No, that does not work. I'm sorry, not in today's society. It's not enough to build it. You got to let people know that you're there, right? Just build it and they will come. No, you got to build it, promote it, build it, promote it, pivot, change, adjust, build it, promote it. All that needs to be involved, which means you have to invest money in marketing somehow, some way.
I'll say also a really good tip that if you're listening to this it's feeling overwhelming and you're like, well, I'm showing up, I'm doing it, or okay, I get it, but I don't know where to start with that, or I'm not sure what people want, I'm not sure what my industry wants, I'm not sure what my where you've sectored yourself wants. You need to ask. You need to ask the people who are paying attention to you what they want, right? And be direct about it. I filled out a survey for, it was basically like the Detroit Arts Council sort of thing, where it was a survey for the museums, the arts organizations, music, whatever, basically all of them, really trying to get a gauge of individuals who patron these areas, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what their habits are right now, not necessarily, and maybe a little bit about what they think the future might hold. But this survey was extremely long, right? And very detailed. And I'm not saying that you need to create some long, detailed survey, but they needed to know answers to all of these questions to make any decision moving forward. But also, even as I was working through the survey, I realized, my God, they're going to have such a clear idea when people fill this out of exactly what to do, And I think that's something that, if you certainly haven't surveyed your audience, talked to your audience, even if you're more of a one-on-one person, you need to get on these Zoom calls, coffee chats, whatever. You need to figure out what people actually want and stop guessing about it, especially if you're showing up and it's not working. So now is the time to do that. You need to do that right now, and you need to put everything into what you learn from those conversations, from those surveys. And marketing doesn't have to be overly complicated, but to circle back to what we were talking about here at the very beginning, it needs to be about the people who are buying from you. So you need to have conversations with these people. You need to understand their values. You need to understand what they need. You need to understand how they need it, when they need it. So if at the very least, all your marketing efforts are focusing on communication with your people, then you're doing it right and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You mentioned something earlier. Actually, no, you've been talking about the entire time. Like, as I'm listening to you and I'm interpreting the message, there are two things that I'm really drawing from this. Number one, get out of your head and get in contact with your people. That's the bottom line. It's real easy to sit at the office, in the den, living room, basement, wherever you're at, and try to pontificate about what your next move should be. Well, your next move is whatever your clients want. That's your next move, right? And I like the idea of utilizing surveys, because guess what? Surveys can be anonymous.
Right.
And relatively speaking, surveys are very inexpensive in terms of time and money, right? What is that? Google, not Google Docs, but whatever that other.
Google.
Yeah, Google Forms. 10, 15 minutes at the most, right? Or, like I tell people all the time, find out, look at the last survey you filled out. Look at what you liked best. Look at what didn't work. Take inventory and adopt some of the approaches, not necessarily the language, right? You don't have to copy and paste people like that, but look at the approach that was employed. And if that survey worked, employ that ideal, right? Utilize survey in the same way. The other thing that I'm thinking about as I'm listening to you, Shelly, is, look, we don't put on NextOppSocial just to have a conversation. This isn't a table talk, right? This platform that we've created is not meant to be like a book that you buy and you sit it in your living room or dining room, or sit it on your table somewhere in your house, and it just sits there and collects dust, and you look at it and say, yeah, I bought that book. That's not what we're doing here. This is valuable to the extent to which you apply the information, right? one of my business mentors always said, you know, when you give a presentation, no matter if your intent is to educate or not, it's just a presentation until someone takes action. Then it becomes a training. Then it becomes useful. Then it becomes something, then it actually becomes a tool, right? And so what I'm encouraging people to hear is, especially now, is to take action now. Move on something now. And it doesn't have to be some huge, grandiose rollout. It doesn't have to be some hyper expensive, hyper time intensive endeavor, but just choose 2 or 3 at the most strategies or tactics and just begin applying them. Snowflakes turn into snowballs. And of course, you know, not shameless, but not so shameless plug. You know, you have a professional, and Rochelle here, where this is what she does, right? This is what highly effective at doing. So I like the fact that you said, look, find individuals who know better than you, right? Find individuals where this is what they do. They are about engagement. They're about client services. They're about utilizing digital media to grow their businesses. You know, professionals specialize just like doctors. You're not going to contact a foot doctor to operate on your brain for a reason, right? Well, when we talk about digital media, I know it's wild, wild west out there, and you have everyone and their mama plopping open their computer and saying, hey, I can fix your situation. But then there are other people who have bona fides. There are individuals who've been doing it for an extended period of time. It's not some hot opportunity to make a quick buck. This is what they live, eat, and breathe. And I encourage individuals, find expert talent. It's worth it. Even if it's just a consultation, it's worth it. You got to feed the baby. Don't starve the baby. Don't treat your business casually or you'll become a casualty, as we've seen, unfortunately, during this past year.
Yeah. 6 months ago, especially if you haven't thrived during this pandemic, right? 6 months ago, you couldn't have anticipated what was going to happen in 6 months. And while that feels scary, you need to take that same approach for the next 6 months. If you double down, if you focus, like Juwan was saying, do something, start this now, pick a few things, get hyper focused on it. In the same respect, 6 months from now, your life could be, for the better, drastically different. Your business can be drastically different. There are so many things that can happen so much faster than they used to because of digital things, digital marketing, digital advertising. So the only thing, I know it sounds cliche, but the only thing stopping you from getting there is you stopping you from getting there. So a lot can happen in the next 4 months. A lot can happen in the next 6 months. You have to look back and see how much has changed already and know that it can change in a positive direction as well. So NextOppSocial family, we appreciate you being on and listening with us. As Juwan said, this isn't just us here to talk for the sake of talking. Communicate with us, share with us. What are you struggling with? What are you hoping to achieve? Share this with individuals that you feel really need to hear this and let this sink in for them as well. And other than that, make sure that you subscribe. Go back to our old chats, and we have lots of nuggets in there of new things that you can learn about from other professionals as well, especially if there are areas of things that you're going to focus on for the rest of the year. Hit subscribe, and we will talk to you all again soon.